Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the mornings. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, though it feels like Friday, even though Tuesday felt like Monday. It's Thursday, April 11th, 2024. Time for another show. I've adjusted some levels here today for the first time in a while. So, things are sounding a little bit different already in the headphones. But, and taking a look back and editing the day's shows each day, it appears I'm turned up a little higher than I really ought to be. And also, the music needed to be a little bit higher. I don't know whether this is going to come out as a good mix or not. We'll see whether I leave Greg turned up or turn Greg up higher than me or turn him off at some point. I don't know. Play around with the controls every once in a while just to freshen things up, I suppose. As I'm dismayed every day as I'm rushing to get the podcast put together and realizing I haven't cut new, fake, really, ads for all of this. All right. Well, I got to get to all of this stuff. It's just, it's difficult to do anything that gets in the way of getting that podcast done, even though I very frequently procrastinate in the middle of the day getting that done. You don't need to hear my whole therapy session, do you? Okay, well, Greg seems ready to, he says, just turn him off completely. Can't do that because we'll want to round up the events of the day, of course, and I was just over at Daily Kos looking to see what was on the front page in the abbreviated pundit roundup when I realized, oh, yes, right, Thursday is Chi-Town Kev's roundup. But, of course, Greg's always rounding up stories and parking them in the Skype chat, so I'll just check there instead. That's what I usually look at. Today I thought, I'll be industrious and I'll go quickly run through the abbreviated pundit roundup on my own, but it was not to be. But my eyes were stopped dead in their tracks. I have dead eyes now. Reuben Bowling's comic that happens to be on the front page at the moment, the rotating cast of fantastic cartoonists that they host over there. Tom the Dancing Bug. This is a good one. Do check it out today. Maybe you'll know where to find it. Taking shots at the Trump Bible today, a Trump illustrated Bible in which Jesus looks just like Trump. It's, historical Jesus. It's going to be fantastic. Anyway, we did a great job as usual with the subject. And, I don't know. I found it, distracting, but worth the distraction. Okay. So, much happening. We got lots to catch up on. It is, we have like 150 years of history to catch up on in Arizona. They're way behind on that one. The 1864 abortion law remains on the books. Yesterday, Democrats in the legislature took a shot at actually offering a measure to repeal it. And Republicans who spent most of the day saying, this is awful, this is terrible, it's going to kill us electorally, this is not our position on abortion. No, what an awful thing. Even Kari Lake saying, no, after saying it was a fantastic thing, catching the car, saying it was an awful thing, and then they said, all right, well, let's get rid of this awful thing. And of course, Republicans voted unanimously to block it, and they did in fact block the effort to repeal the 1864 law. So that was of some interest. Also of some interest, of course, I thought this would probably happen if somebody just paused for a moment to take a look back at who were the people in this neighborhood, we might ask, who passed this 1864 law. This is 50 years before statehood or something like that. And, just the idea of they just organized this territory. So the first legislature that they convene comes out with this abortion law. And I wondered what kind of, was that a huge issue that had to be addressed top of the list there for a brand new territory to take on an abortion law? Seemed kind of interesting to make that among your top choices. What should our flag look like? How should we manage our land and water resources? I guess in 1864, the question was almost settled, but not entirely, I guess. I don't know. When did they meet for the first time? Should we be a free state or a slave state? It was probably on people's minds a few years before organizing the territory. Probably by 1864, when they met. I guess we should check the calendar. Where they just like, well, that's out the window. So never mind that. We probably would have been a slave state, but forget that. But among all these things, they also said, you know what? There's too many abortions around here. We just got to do something about that. I don't know. I found that kind of interesting. And then the Washington Post looked further into, well, who were these people who decided that among the many top line issues for a brand new territory to address would be abortion. And guess what? Holy mackerel. They're weird. And you'll never guess what else they spent their time trying to figure out. Well, you won't have to guess because we'll tell you. But probably later in the show. It's just interesting. This focus on Arizona. There's an awful lot about it we should be digging into. And let's see, lots of developments in court for the former guy. We inch ever closer to the Monday, April 15th opening of his Stormy Daniels hush money trial in New York. They are making daily attempts from the Trump side to try to delay the trial or find some way of staying proceedings. I mean, literally daily. They've done like 3 or 4 of them in a row. And these 3 or 4 of them in a row have been considered by the Court of Appeals and rejected within hours of the conclusion of the hearing. But, that doesn't seem to deter Trump. It doesn't seem to bother him that he's running up the legal bills. He's not paying them, I guess, out of his own pocket. But he's got to, at some point, start to worry about the depth of the reservoir of funds from which he's, I guess, well, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't bother him because ultimately the solution is always there. Just don't pay, and then everything will be fine. So we had lots of time to discuss the possibilities of that happening. And, something else we haven't gotten to. The latest fun trick for Republican secretaries of state in the various states of the union, the ones that are states now, not the ones just organizing towards statehood. Like yesterday in 1864 over in Arizona. But the new trick is to dig up statutes that purport, anyway, to require that the major parties name their nominees for ballot printing purposes in these states, in some cases, well in advance of the November election. Alabama and Ohio, maybe, are the latest to try this, and it's their claim that, and they're right by on the face of the law, that the Democratic Convention this year, at which the nomination will be formally secured, falls after the deadline date, at least in Alabama, and I think it was a little bit questionable possibly in Ohio. And so therefore, sorry, Joe Biden can't appear on the ballot, which you think was probably motivated by the 14th Amendment cases seeking to keep Trump off the ballot for his insurrection. No real reason given here for the Biden thing. But, as it turns out, well, we'll read through the facts of the case. But long story short on that one, I think, is that Alabama has had this law for some time. It has, of course, interfered with the deadline in the past. Both parties have missed that deadline in the past, and it's just been, as a matter of course, they waive the deadline, and in some cases pass one-time legislation, as they did, I think, in 2020 or 2016? I can't recall. I think it's probably 2020. One-time legislation allowing, for instance, the Trump campaign to appear on the ballot despite having missed the deadline, but then reverting back to the deadline. Anyway, it was something that was routinely waived because, come on, everybody knows who the major party nominees are, and you don't mess with this sort of thing. Let's just allow a normie election here. But it is a tool that's in their belt, and Republicans seem intent on trying to make real use of it. We'll see what sort of success they have with it and what the escape routes are. I'm not terribly concerned. A couple of the people who have looked at this say there are easy fixes beyond just getting the state legislature to give you a pass that are available to you. So don't panic yet, but it is indicative of the kind of people who run Secretary of State offices in, crappy places, essentially. Ohio's nice. Alabama's got some nice spots. And there's plenty of good people there. You just have terrible secretaries of state. Greg Dworkin knows how nice you are in Alabama and Ohio, and he's willing to say so. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. Oh, there's a lot of nice people.
Yeah, they're terrific. Scott, for instance.
Hey, it's a good reminder
yes.
that Arizona didn't become a state until 1912.
Yeah, sure. Why not? That's a good reminder.
So 1865. I mean, it's not just like, well, it was a couple of weeks before it became a state. It was like decades
this was early,
before it became a state.
Well, yeah, this was their first organized legislature. So it took them some time.
And they were really, I don't know the full story of like what was going on in context, but they were really into poisoning.
Poisoning?
Yeah, I mean, the whole text of this law is about all the ways that people who poison others really have to be punished. Oh, by the way, abortions as well.
Yes, although I will point out, if the shoe were on the other foot somehow and Republicans were pro-choice and Democrats, I don't know, or for whatever reason they needed to get rid of this law or preserve this law, I looked over the statute. I did say, now I know what you're talking about. But if it were Republicans doing this, they would be looking at this and saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I read the law. It doesn't say abortion anywhere. Show me in this law where it says it prohibits abortion. You're wrong. Sorry, it just doesn't. They didn't use that term.
The intention to procure the miscarriage of any woman then being with child through poisoning.
Miscarriage. That is an interesting way of viewing it.
Every person who shall administer or cause to be administered or taken any medicinal substance or shall use or cause to be used any instrument, whatever, with that includes coat hangers, with the intention to procure the miscarriage of any woman then being with child and shall thereof duly convicted, shall be punished by imprisonment in the territorial prison for a term of not less than 2 years, nor more than 5 years, provided no physician shall be affected by the last clause of this section.
No physician. Oh, that's nice of them.
So the docs get off.
Yeah.
But the ladies don't.
By the way, and then there's another strict thing. I say, okay, so you've prohibited abortion in all cases here in Arizona. You've got somebody convicted of it, and what are we going to do with them? Hey, guess what we don't have? Territorial prisons.
Yeah, well, in those days, the full language says that the doc gets off if it's necessary to produce the miscarriage of any woman in order to save her life. Oh. So there's a couple of things you have to step back and look at with this now on the books law. In an era where, by the way, historians say the best way to get to Washington as a representative of the Arizona territories was via Panama. I mean, let's just say it was a different era.
Oh, to actually physically arrive there. Okay, that's
months later.
Yeah.
Was to go through Panama. I don't know why, but maybe it wasn't easy to walk there from Arizona the way it is from New Hampshire because it's a small state.
Right. What? Yeah. No. Even the people from New Hampshire probably needed a ride once in a while.
Probably.
Yeah. So you go by ship, I suppose. Head west, get on a ship, go through the Panama Canal. Wow.
Anyway, so the first part of Section 45 of the Howell Code describes the penalties possible for knowingly poisoning a person.
When you put it that way.
Fine. That was then. This is now.
Yes.
What is so fascinating about it, as you pointed out at the beginning in your intro,
whatever you would call that thing I did, yes,
was the response of the Republicans.
Yes,
we believe that this is a great law which should stay on the books, and it's wonderful, said Kari Lake, until it was enacted, and then I hate this law. We have to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then it's just so bizarre and so clear and so obvious that they're screwed on this.
Yes, and then even then, okay, Kari Lake, let's get rid of it. What? No,
So that's part of the whole big picture here.
What am I
Lori
doing?
Roberts has a nice setup for this in the Arizona Republic opinion columnist.
Okay, all right, Arizona
who
Republic
basically points out the many ways that Arizona Republicans have screwed themselves. Here's what's clear, she writes. If the GOP-run legislature does nothing and allows this 19th century law to stand, Republicans soon could be looking at a state where abortion is a constitutional right and Democrats take total control of the state.
Oh.
The Arizona for Abortion Access Initiative, enshrining abortion into the state constitution, already has the signatures to get on the November ballot. It already was going to boost voter turnout, which is no small thing in a state that Biden won by just 0.3%. But now with a Civil War era law in place that criminalizes abortion except to save the life of the mother, if I were Donald Trump or Kari Lake, I'd be frantic.
Yes, well, they are that.
And, of course, the justices who voted to uphold this, 2 of the 4, as we said yesterday, are on the ballot this year. They don't call it re-election; they call it reaffirmation, or every state has its own weird terms for things.
Well, they don't call it
like
abortion.
If you don't belong to a political party, are you a non-party affiliate, or are you a uncommitted voter? Are you a
eligible elector?
Whatever.
Sure, all sorts of things.
So Kari Lake is flailing with her explanation, and the question that Lori Roberts asks is, how does a MAGA legislature extract except from the box it built? And that's the thing that you have to understand about the Arizona legislature. It is MAGA. It is totally right-wing, which is why they took the step to block any attempt at fixing this. Unlike Alabama, which immediately ran to say, we were chasing the car. We didn't want to catch the car. Now that we did, we have to ban cars.
Yeah. Back off the
so
car.
that we don't do this to ourselves. So, yeah, IVF is okay. We said it wasn't until it was real. Now that it's real, we have to back off on this because we understand the implications. But the Arizona legislature is in a different position because they're all super hard right wing. Yeah. If Republicans repeal the 1864 law now, they make a mockery of their own belief that life begins at conception, she writes, and all abortion is murder. If they put up a competing measure proposing that abortion be legal for up to 15 weeks, which is the position Trump was attempting to take, they risk alienating their voter base and send a message that the ultimate sin is negotiable. Keep that in mind, risk alienating their voter base, because we're going to get back to that with Trump. And if they do nothing, it's a disaster. As Kari Lake tweeted in 2022, all baby lives matter. Every single heartbeat is a gift from God, and we'll never stop fighting to protect life, except when their political lives matter.
Yes, right. Well, I meant their life.
So we believe in exceptions to the abortion law. And the exception is like if it's going to hurt me politically.
Yeah. Which is, that's pretty wild. Well, they certainly do give themselves a wide berth.
Right. So that's where the New York Times story, many places cover this, but I happen to have the Times open. Arizona Republicans thwart attempts to repeal 1864 abortion ban. Democrats in both houses of the legislature were blocked from advancing bills to roll back the reinstated ban on nearly all abortions in the state. And so that's what happened. But again, you have to step back and look at the big picture. And this is for all of the both sides people who just drive you nuts.
Oh, well, yes.
Okay? Trump basically has said, he stated, Aaron Blake has this. Trump makes it pretty clear why he's saying what he's saying about abortion. The only issue they think they have is on abortion. And now all I say is that states are handling it and it's totally killed that issue. That was a quote from him. The Democrats are reeling when they have no response to my recent statement on abortion. His statement on abortion was that it should be left to the states. That's what he said on Monday.
That's right.
And then he declared, I've taken the issue off the table, which he didn't.
Yeah.
Nobody believes him. The only people that believe Trump are the New York Times editors.
Taking the Big Mac off the table. That I believe.
So no, he didn't take. And then Arizona happened. And now, as Josh Marshall pointed out, when pressed, he was forced to say, I say no to a national ban on abortions.
Sort of.
Talk about alienating his base.
Yes, that was nice.
He didn't want to say that. He was forced into saying that. No, I'm not arguing that the base is therefore not going to vote for him. What I'm saying is he was trying to weasel out of this by taking no position, and Arizona forced him to take a position he didn't want to take, which means he's losing.
That's good. I'm for that. I had to spend a little bit of time on it because they were imprecise in their language, but I don't really think it makes the reporters, in terms of pressing him, I don't think they understood the mechanics.
He said no 3 times.
Yeah,
they asked him 3 separate times.
And
they kept trying to get, and he said no 3 times.
Yeah, well, they asked him, would you sign a bill that had a national abortion ban? I'm just, because of what we do here on the show, I have to point out to people that if a national abortion ban bill is passed in Congress and handed to Donald Trump and he does not sign it, it becomes law in 10 days regardless.
Yeah,
it's the question here is, will you veto it? Yes. Will you prevent such a law from taking effect? Yes or no?
Right. Well, they still have that.
That's the
they
actual
have to
question.
ask him about the Comstock Act, but his point
this is a good start.
I dealt with it Monday, and now it's off the table, and nobody's talking about it. And in fact, everybody's talking about it, and they keep asking him.
That I hate it. I'm glad they've finally found something that they're willing to hound him with, because that's the way you deal with a guy like that.
Yes, exactly.
And,
you have to keep doing that,
and he
not
smells
just
terrible.
well. The next story is that Trump tried to get his trial postponed again for the third time, and now stick with this.
Yeah,
stick.
This
with
is a good one.
This.
And there are many hundreds of such stories. If this one ever fizzles out, there are other things. You really do have to press him to the point where he gets annoyed. Now he snaps at you, and he does tell the people in the crowd to kill you. But that's how you know you're getting under his thick, disgusting orange skin, smelly as it is. You should continue to do it.
So
you might get killed.
Arizona,
I don't know,
legislature refused to get rid of this 1864 ban because they don't want to.
It's an antique.
They don't want to get rid of it.
Right.
They like it.
Yes.
And that's why they're screwed.
Well, that's the way it looks, certainly. I mean, they may have their own reasons.
They could have agreed with the Democrats. And again, the larger point here is that Republicans, and the best example, of course, is the Senate border bill that the House refuses to take up. Why does the House refuse to take it up? They were considering taking it up, but then Trump said, don't do it. Why did he say don't do it? Because it's better for me politically if you don't fix this problem.
Yeah,
so the Republican Party under Trump is completely committed to the idea that whatever it is, the only thing that matters is whether it's good for me politically or not, which is what he basically said about the abortion thing.
How could this not outrage the problem solvers?
That's the Republican Party. The Democratic Party, with the chance to say, hey, we have an issue here which is going to win us the Arizona legislature, as well as the state of Arizona for the presidential race, as well as senator, governor, everything. We have an issue here that's just like made for us. We want to get rid of it because it's not good for people.
Yes. And
so
that's
how
why
in the world
do
you write stuff about both parties being the same? They're exactly the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's the template I have, and I can't. It's very difficult to get out of it. And if I don't write it,
Newsletter on politics, New York
Times,
April 10th, 2024. Two imperfect messengers take on abortion. Neither side of the abortion divide would probably design the exact candidate they have in 2024. What a stupid article. What a stupid headline.
Thing to even ask
what a
for.
Stupid concept. The parties could not be different, and each one of the candidates lines up with their party. The only difference is Trump doesn't believe in anything, but you can't say that. And the other difference is Trump lies about everything, but you can't say that either. And so you make this both sides argument here. It's ridiculous.
Well, it is terrible, and it does play into the worst possible frame. And of course, they will do that. I don't know. Yeah, once again, they're sort of running into this situation where there's just no conventional way to explain what Trump is doing. You can't.
Right, and we felt like
you
he
can't
gave
say
us
how
out
his
on Monday
position
because
is.
he was weaselly enough.
I guess
some people say, and then by Wednesday it just had fallen apart, and the article was already written, and now you can't pull it.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's it. Maybe that has something to do with it. I've committed hours to writing this thing, and the best way to get it published is we change a few words. It's a little inaccurate, but what the hell? It's still largely it's arguable. Go ahead and run it. I don't know. Maybe that is
a nice Josh Marshall editorial.
All right.
Unfortunately, paywall. Trump feels on the run on abortion. Today in Atlanta, a reporter asked Trump whether he would sign a national abortion ban if Congress sent one to him. He would not. A clear no. He got asked again said no. As you pointed out, they didn't ask him if he would veto it or block it.
Right.
It should go without saying that there's zero reason to believe him. If Congress passed such a law, he would almost certainly sign it.
Yes, he doesn't really know the trick of not signing it.
It wouldn't matter. I mean, he's lying.
Right.
But that's not the point. And Marshall says, that's not what's interesting here.
Yeah.
He's very conspicuously did not say this in his abortion mini speech on Monday. It's not like he didn't know that was an option. He and his campaign very strategically did not say this, and now he has. It's a very clear sign of just how much Trump and his campaign feel like they're on the run and on the ropes on this issue, especially because he's declaring it's off the table and I won.
Let Trump be Trump.
I added that, but that's what he did.
Okay.
I just addressed it on Monday. There's nothing to discuss anymore. Stop asking me.
Good. That, of course, is your invitation to keep asking him. Right.
But what Josh
he lies
Marshall
about
says
everything.
is the Monday announcement was generally ineffective, and even more after the bombshell news yesterday out of Arizona. Just 2 days later, and they're already having to do repair work on the big announcement that was supposed to sidestep the issue for the campaign. And Biden's campaign has a very clear, simple message. Donald Trump did this.
Yes.
And it works because it's true. Because Donald Trump took credit for it. Because he said, I am responsible for getting rid of Roe.
Yes, but he lies about everything, and so therefore he's not responsible. Aha!
Here are his words.
Okay.
And so for you low information voters who don't realize he lies about everything, this is, you're going to hear this like a lot. Because the Biden campaign has a lot of money and is already buying up campaign ad time that Trump can't buy because he doesn't have the money for it.
Yeah.
Because he's siphoning it off for his legal fees, including on trials that start on Monday.
Yeah. Right.
So, indeed, Marshall writes, Trump himself has shown he's unwilling and unable not to keep taking the same credit. Trump did this, and he's feeling the heat in a way his own campaign didn't expect. And so far, he's unable to deal with it.
Yeah, he's not built for this, certainly. And, in the normal circumstances, the rest of his life has been about, say, taking credit for something. And then, and if in the moment it sounds like it's actually bad, he just do a 180. Why not?
Yeah,
and
not
then do another one if he needs to.
He's in trouble.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Trump, he's still terrible. He's still confused about what to do. He's still on the run. What else do we need to know?
Axios steps back and looks at the big picture. And remember, a big picture has to be capitalized when you do that.
Yes.
You could put it in scare quotes, but the best thing to do is capitalize big and picture.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the big picture, a measure to enshrine abortion rights in the Arizona Constitution is likely to be on the ballot. Democrats believe Tuesday's bombshell decision will help them not only pass the abortion initiative, but also take control of the legislature and win races up and down the ballot. By the way, I have to add this.
All right.
How can you be so cruel as to not mention the trauma for Arizona women, and why are you concentrating on the politics? And the answer is because this isn't going to happen. The law is not going to be, enforced.
We do have that backstop.
We talked about that yesterday. The attorney general said she's not enforcing it. This is the one that won by 200 some odd votes, which is why elections matter. But legal challenges Because what happened is it got sent back to the lower courts. And
Okay.
so legal challenges will tie this up before November. And in November, Democrats are going to win the ballot. So I'm not so worried about it in the sense that, yeah, it's going to cause anxiety and angst and trauma and such, but it's not actually going to block anything.
Yes, we hope not.
Impact of this is that it's not going to take effect before November. And if, as I believe, Democrats will win this initiative as they have everywhere else, it's not going to take effect at all.
Yes. But
That's why I'm concentrating on it.
There's angst and trauma in the meantime, certainly.
That's real.
But, yeah.
No question about it. But, this law is not going to take effect.
Well, yes. I'm cautious about saying anything about what will and won't happen under normal circumstances, but this does seem like it's facing awfully long odds.
So the big picture.
Infinitely bad, yeah.
Democrats believe it'll help them win everything. Why it matters? Well, that's why it matters. Republicans have one-vote majorities in both legislative chambers, which they've mostly controlled since 1967.
1867.
Since,
it's, what? Since Goldwater.
Since Barry Goldwater days, basically.
Yep. Okay.
President Biden in 2020 became the first Democratic presidential candidate to win Arizona in 24 years. A handful of Republican state lawmakers said Tuesday they'd push for a swift repeal, but that didn't happen.
No.
Senate President Warren Peterson and House Speaker Ben Toma said in a joint statement they'll review the ruling, talk with their colleagues, listen to constituents, but Toma already says he's not going to support a repeal. He's the House guy. He won't permit a vote on it.
Oh, really? Well, okay.
Why? He's in a competitive primary for the heavily Republican 8th Congressional District. That's why.
Oh. Huh. Okay. I mean, that's bad. But yes, I understand.
So that's why they didn't immediately go in on the repeal. Well, and their excuses, were the usual weasel word excuses. Well, you can't ask us to move this fast. This is a really important issue to women, and we need time to debate it. So, of course, we're not going to do this overnight.
Yes, and I'm somewhat sympathetic with that, except it's, I do know it's an excuse.
Except it's bullshit.
Yeah, oh, right.
And again, we go back to the whole point. This would be good politically for Democrats to throw them an anchor and let it sink the Republican Party of Arizona. They're not doing that. They just want the law off the books because it's bad for women.
Yeah.
That's the Democratic Party. The Republican Party looks at this and says, this is really bad for us. Let's go all in.
Yeah.
And you scratch your head and say, what is going on here?
Rogers.
State Senator Eva Birch, Democrat, Mesa, who made headlines last month for sharing her abortion story, said Democratic candidates need votes from people who support abortion rights but don't usually elect Democrats. We need you to understand this is the issue of our times. And yet she's still all in on getting rid of the law, even though it would help her in that regard.
Yes. Well, that's something, right? Yeah, yeah, it would help me electorally, but isn't it better to help people?
Yes, exactly. Between the lines, Katie Hobbs, Democrat, and lawmakers were quick to note that this ban could be a precursor to contraception and IVF bans, other issues expected to fire up voters. So until you nail this down, until you have our rights to abortion and health care in the Constitution, we don't have the right. The other side, in a sign of the issue's resonance, some Republicans staring down tough elections were quick to denounce the near-total ban. GOP U.S. House members Juan Ciscomani and David Schweikert called for repeal of the ban. They're in swing districts. They have no effect whatsoever on what Arizona actually does because they're national, not state.
Right.
Republican U.S. Senate candidate Kari Lake criticized the ruling and urged Hobbs and the legislature to come up with an immediate common sense solution. And then they're going to yell at Hobbs because she didn't come up with an immediate common sense solution.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
That doesn't work because, as we talked about, Lake was for it before she was against it.
Right. That's cool now, people. That's actually a good thing to do for MAGA.
So Kamala Harris is going to Tucson on Friday for a reproductive freedom-related event.
Oh.
Which is in the works well before the ruling.
Oh.
And as it turns out, good timing.
Yes, I guess it pays to be proactive. They must have had some inkling that this case was pending, but...
Well, Kari Lake did a couple of years ago, but they had no idea when they were going to rule on it.
Yes. Well, I guess not. I don't know. But
it's
a little
amazing.
easier
You just have to
scheduling
step back and appreciate the whole picture here. On Monday, Republicans incorrectly thought that they had a handle on this. Just as Republican unnamed male consultants incorrectly thought that somehow or other they'll find a way to neutralize Dobbs because it's worked so well for them in 2020 and 2022.
Yeah, well, you try a couple of things. They didn't work out.
But this time we have it. And what we'll do is we'll say, leave it to the states. And Trump was convinced of his genius.
Right, Abby, it's true.
In completely neutralizing the issue. And it turns out, well, no, it didn't work.
Well, he's not a very good strategist. And he's also a big liar. And I guess it shouldn't surprise us that things would implode on him once in a while. Or every single time. And
again, I can't emphasize this enough. This is an actual implosion, which the press can't sanitize for him, even though the New York Times tries.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those things that is a bit of a frenzy going on. Everybody's reporting on this, and everybody wants. And it sets up so well. They even short attention span theater people can figure out. He said this Monday. I can handle from Monday forward. I mean, come Friday, we might be out of luck, but for now, everybody can appreciate it.
Because he keeps stepping in it.
Well, yeah, there's that. He shuffles onto every rake.
Right. Meanwhile, there's another rake that he's going to step on in the next 3 or 4 days.
All right.
We temporarily stop talking about abortion in Arizona, which I don't think we will, because the Arizona state legislature will not cooperate in making it a non-story. These two, this one from Reuters, Trump loses third bid this week to delay hush money trial.
Yes.
I think we mentioned it yesterday, but certainly worth pointing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this
is his third last attempt this week to delay the Monday trial, and it didn't work.
Nah,
and then,
no reason it should.
After that happens,
yes,
Trump falsely claims he just found new information exonerating him in his Stormy Daniels affair case.
This just in.
Yeah. Look what was just found, he wrote on Truth Social. Will the fake news reported? Trump asked. He has a document, which is Stormy Daniels incorrectly declaring that they never had a relationship, which later that day she said, I was forced into signing.
Yeah. It's actually... He's waved that one around before, and
that's the thing. It's
debunked.
Not new.
Right.
It's been around for years.
In addition to it not being true, it's also not new. But
it's been around since 2018. There's nothing new about it.
Yeah, and she claims, if anything, it was issued at all. If it was even issued, it was under duress. But she says I didn't sign it. That's not my signature. So everybody look. The guy who forged for freaking electoral college vote certificates, and who, by the way, fraudulently posted bond in his fraud trial twice this week, has a brand new document that no one's ever seen before that's totally signed by Stormy Daniels saying, the whole thing is just a hoax. Anyone believe it? Good luck if you do. So, yeah, that's fun. Plus, the added angle of, is this the same one we saw several years ago that was debunked? No, look what I just found, because I'm so organized. This is supposed to be president of the United States.
I'm losing it and I forgot about it.
Mm-hmm. And it was mixed in with classified documents about nuclear weapons that I stole from the White House.
Right, but Aileen Cannon said I could keep this one.
Yep. And that one is personal. You can keep it. It's not even official.
I won.
Right. You had the right to do that the whole time. Okay, well, good luck or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And, hey, there's a trial starting Monday. He's going to bring it and wave it around, too, I bet.
Right. So, again, I think those are the two big stories. The trial Monday is, out there. It's just, floating, waiting for its time. And this abortion thing, I have news for unnamed Republican male consultants. It hasn't been neutralized as an issue. It never was. It's now back on Let's Talk About It hourly.
Yes.
It was dominating the talk shows this morning. And it's going to for the rest of the week until the Trump trial, in which case it'll,
Yeah.
The idea that all publicity is good publicity, good luck. Bring it. Let's see.
Yeah, probably not. And, this is guaranteed discussion for the weekend shows, the Sunday shows, which, we all hate and avoid. But that'll be the last thing, the last round before the beginning of the trial will be.
Right.
All about
I remember
this.
the Sunday show's purpose and function is to influence reporters because, they're the only people that watch anymore.
Yes, right. The rest of us are watching other things on Sunday, or it's, it'll be a nice spring day, be outside or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Now,
So
there's a number of
poorly.
other things we normally could talk about, but my voice is giving out again.
Oh dear. Okay.
Trump's pathetic and dangerous foreign policy reboot by David Rothkopf in the Daily Beast about how Trump is screwing up his message with Netanyahu. Remember Sheldon Adelson, who died, but his wife, Miriam, still has tons of money and is a big Trump supporter, and set it up so that he could have a discussion about offering a strong statement of solidarity with his buddy Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And what they got instead was, you have to finish up your war, you have to get it done, we have to get peace. And that doesn't mean Trump is a peacenik.
No.
But Trump does see the handwriting on the wall, and Trump doesn't want to be on the losing side of yet another issue. Being pro-Netanyahu was good during the GOP primaries, but they're over. And so now it isn't, and now he doesn't know what to do with where he should land. So like abortion, this is another issue where he's going to say stuff now, which is going to hurt him later. And no, it's not just all about Biden.
Okay.
You'd
right.
like it
That's
to be
true.
out there, but no, it's
in
not.
certain spaces, sure. But although it does occur to me, this is something that they always have to deal with, is getting through the primaries with red meat for the base and then tacking to the center.
Yeah, exactly right.
Say.
And this is yet another issue that they haven't figured out what to do with yet, and they're not going to because it's too complicated for him.
And he's,
and besides, he's on the wrong side. But this is what happens when you don't have any core values.
Well, it makes the tacking easier, but it makes it more difficult to make sure that people stay in the boat with you.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
We don't have a sail, so it's easy to move. But, the downside is, we don't go anywhere.
Yeah. All right. And everybody's jumping off the boat on top of it all. All right. Well, they haven't done that yet. And they may have nowhere to go. But, you got to have one or the other. Either passengers or a sail, right? Something.
But again, does this mean that, therefore, things are solid about how you run against Trump with his foreign policy debacles? No, what this is more of an indication of, as is the abortion thing, is that all of those articles that were written 2 weeks ago about how brilliant and organized and professional the Trump campaign is.
Why would you write that?
As Dave Weigel likes to put it, they took that one out of the oven a little too soon.
Yeah, that was never going to fly, could it? Possibly. I mean, he's the most
they tried to
disorganized
make it a
person
thing.
ever. Oh, well, I
tried to make
may have
fetch
missed
happen,
that
if
one.
you remember that. And fetch is not going to happen. And so, the Trump campaign is just so totally organized. And somebody pointed out on Twitter, well, the Biden campaign is too, because in 2024, they've got tons of money. They're opening up campaigns in every state. They have a plan. This is nothing like 2020 when Trump basically said that Biden stayed in the basement, and Biden did stay in the basement.
Okay.
Well, what was different about 2020? Anybody remember?
No, nothing. I was better off.
This virus,
yes.
Anything, that might have contributed to how the campaign was run? Nothing.
That was the reason for the basement. Yeah. And speaking of, as you mentioned Biden, lots of money, opening up offices. That last item that you sent yesterday was interesting. Do you remember the GOP outreach center in the Metro Atlanta suburbs that Greg Bluestein had? We got an opportunity to bring that up now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but you sent me. Who's Greg Bluestein is the tweeter in this. And
the Georgia political reporter.
The GOP Outreach Center in Metro Atlanta suburbs is now, drum roll, I guess I don't have drum roll, home to a sex toy shop. Like,
they didn't have the money to keep up their pretenses of having a real campaign.
It was
we needed the money for legal fees. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So this is what happens. These things close. Every time you see, it goes on to say that it's one of at least 3 Republican offices in Atlanta that is now shuttered after opening to much fanfare and promises of reaching voters of color. So they had an event. Look, we're doing an outreach to voters of color. They took pictures of the offices, and then it was, as it turns out, they were really opening Spirit Halloween stores, essentially, and they were gone in 2 weeks, and that's it. They were opened for a photo op.
Right.
They never had the money to operate them, and probably had no intention of operating them, even if they did have the money.
Or as they call them in the business, these were pop-ups.
Yeah, pop-ups, vaporware, whatever you want to call it. That's all it was. And yeah, but underlying it all may be the fact that even if they wanted to continue the show, they couldn't afford to do so because Trump is vacuuming up all the money and allegedly spending it on lawyers. Although, again, no proof that he's actually doing that either. It may all be going to, who knows, Cayman Islands.
Also,
Russia,
when it comes to vacuuming up all the money, there isn't that much money. Biden campaign still has like 3 times the amount of money that the Trump campaign has.
Well,
which matters because when you buy ads now, and Biden can afford to reserve the time now, and Trump can't, as it gets closer to the election, when you start, raising money and try to make it a little bit more on equal footing, everything you do costs a whole lot more. And that's also true if third parties come in and try to do it.
That's true, too. I wonder whether he's convinced any of his donor base, I need your support. Again, I mean, he must have fatigued them at some point, but they didn't show any fatigue the first time around. And maybe
he claims he just raised $50 million, but we don't believe it because we want to see the filings.
You should never believe his paperwork. And even when you see the filings, I do remind you he's on
trial on Monday. And you shouldn't believe his abortion position or his position on anything because his only position is it good for me?
That's and that brings us back to another big picture. Step back and look at the big picture thing. It's very, very difficult to get the media to understand. Regular words don't work for this guy. There may even be an FEC report that says he raised $50 million. But as a normal, in the normal course of things, look, it's a federal filing. You'll be, quote unquote, in trouble if it's not true.
It's official.
Doesn't matter.
The official statement says you did this.
Right. And then you find out, he didn't. Well, now he's in trouble. He lied. Well, we'll see whether he's in trouble. If he's president again, his bet is, I'm not in trouble. If he's not president again, he is in trouble, except, there'll be 15 motions to dismiss the case the day before the trial starts, and some of them will work and some of them won't, and yada, yada.
Let's talk about whether or not Trump is telling the truth next week while he's on trial.
Oh, yeah. That's where it's supposed to matter. Yeah, that's a forum in which it's supposedly, normally for regular people, it hurts your interests terribly, and you might even find yourself in jail if you just lie. We'll see whether that applies to a guy who thinks he can pardon himself for everything, or laws don't really apply to him, or I don't know what else. But, it's very hard to report. It makes it, this is the reason this is a 2-hour show, generally speaking, is you have to explain everything.
You do.
So,
Can't take anything at face value.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it for me. You have an hour and 10
don't
minutes
value
to
his
clean
face.
up whatever it is we messed up in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, we ruined it. I don't know. We'll clean up, and next time we speak, Donald J. Trump will be a criminal defendant facing trial. Well, he I guess he is that now, but the trial will be starting.
Get any last-minute delays.
Yes, that's right. So you can head over, if you're in the area, head over, buy a pretzel, and go in and try to
remember,
sit.
the difference between this and Letitia James' trial is this is criminal.
That's true.
The Letitia James' trial was merely civil, and it was only about Trump's money, something he cares about and you don't. But this is a criminal trial, and this is something that Ipsos says the public does care about. Criminal trials.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I wanted to ask you something, but might not remember offhand. But I think you were the first one to mention to me about the Axos Bank.
Yeah.
And it's come up again. And I was wondering, do you remember
the Axios Bank? You mean
in what
the
context
crooks
that
who
came
are
up?
claiming to pretend to give Trump money to pay his?
Yes. Well, and I wondered, did you bring that up was that early on in that context, the bond? Or I don't think the bond had become a story yet. And I wondered, do you remember what your first mention of Axios was?
Oh,
I mean, I don't remember what
first?
happened 5 days ago or 5 minutes ago, but yeah.
That was about a week ago. The AP had a story about Axios Bank and how Don Hankey, who is the California billionaire,
Yes.
Who is its biggest individual shareholder, is basically a billionaire used car dealer or something like that.
Right.
And how indicative it is of Republican politics that used car dealers are the thing.
Okay.
That's going to get Trump. And according to records, AP had the story a week ago. Over the past 2 years, Axios Bank, as well as its largest individual shareholder, California billionaire Don Hankey, have collectively extended more than $500 million in financing that's benefited Trump.
Yes.
The cash influx has helped Trump to pay off debts, pocket a profit, while escaping from a lease on his money-losing hotel in Washington.
Right.
Covered a $175 million down payment he made this week on an eye-popping civil fraud penalty.
Sort of.
And Hankey says, no, it's good for us business-wise.
Yeah, because reasons.
Hankey, who made his fortune
business
selling
decisions.
high-interest auto loans to those with bad credit histories,
Yeah.
has faced scrutiny before. One of his companies, Westlake Services, was forced to pay $48 million in penalties and compensation after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which Republicans want to get rid of, an agency created by Obama, found that they used debt collection tactics that the Bureau described as illegal. So
yes.
it was in the context of this is the guy who's financing the bond. That's where
That
I brought
is
it
where
up.
it came up. Okay. That's I was wondering whether it had come up in some separate way or something, because a week later I read another such story about that, and I don't know if we discussed the full extent of what Axios was, but it struck me and stuck with me because the name was so close to Axios that we paused to say not Axios the news guys, but Axios the
Well, this is from
fraud
Washington
guys.
Post in 2023, July 2023. Trump needed $225 million. A little-known bank came to the rescue.
All right. They'll send me
So he
that.
always gets
here?
money from them. If Russia can't give it to him, he gets it from them.
Yeah.
Although I
And
think he asked Russia first.
I think there might even be a Russian involved in this too, as it turns out. As I recall, there's an article floating around. I'll have to dig it up, but not that far down in pocket. That I think says that the big real estate bailout on some of the balloon payments on his existing loans, not only financed in part by Axios, but also financed in part by another sanctioned Russian at some point. So okay, that's, it's just weird how he keeps ending up coming back to the same people for handouts.
Well, if they give him money, you're going to come back to the people who
I
give you
guess
money
that's
because nobody
true.
else will.
Right. If I press the lever and a pellet comes out, you can keep pressing the lever.
Yeah. Besides,
I
they need the
understand.
money.
Yeah. And it's delicious as well. Okay. Well, just wondering if I had missed something to thread this whole thing. But if you have an article handy that's from 2023, way back in 2023, were you better off 1 year ago than you were today? Then I'd like to, let me add that to the collection. You can drop that in.
Okay, well, there it is.
Into the basket of deplorables, and I'll read it from there. Okay.
All right,
Thanks,
the last
Greg.
one on the list.
Very good. Have a non-deplorable weekend, and we'll see you when Trump is on trial.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for hanging in there. Voice sounds good to me.
I'm pushing it here. I'm using the mute button a lot.
Okay. Well,
Luckily, you at home can't hear that, but
right. I gotta get
it
one
goes
of your
off,
mute
I cough,
buttons.
it comes back.
It's fine. Works well. Thank you for trying, and I hope it all goes away.
I didn't catch Abby in time, but
That's okay. We needed
luckily
to hear
she
from
was
her.
thrown out of the house. So
She was protesting in the background.
she's out on the street now.
You protest in this house, you're out on the street
in
next.
front of the mailbox,
All right.
making a fire and roasting wieners.
Well, not bad.
In
if
coffee
you can
cans.
get it. Yeah. Good work for a dog.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, nice work if you can get it. Take care,
Yes.
and I'll talk to you on Monday.
Right. All right. Well, that's wraps it up for today, and we're right up against the break anyway. So let me see. I should just sort of take a look at this thing. I think if I look back in Pocket, I will find some of this material over the break, but probably, yeah, I wonder if I can find the, did we do it already, and might it already have been moved to the archives? Anyway, I'll have to take a look around. We'll find the piece and make sure that I remember it correctly. But there was definitely another sanctioned Russian in there for some reason. Yeah, I don't know if the archives is going to help me any, because that's probably a jumbled mess. But if I can do it, well, we'll see whether there's any quick headlines that jump out. But sometimes it's hidden behind, pocket hinkiness, as you might say. Yeah, it's not immediately obvious. We'll see what we can come up with over the break, which is just, still a couple minutes away. Anyway, I thought I might tell you, maybe we can use this time to start in on Arizona just a little bit more. I mentioned that everybody's taking a second, third, fourth look at Arizona. So one version of it at the Washington Post, there's at least two people writing on it at the Washington Post that I'm aware of, and it looks like they changed the font of their headlines. What's this about? This in the perspective column of Monica Hess. It's Hess or Hesse? Hesse. Are we using, I don't even know if I would know German pronunciation about it. Anyway, even though it's a very famous German surname, that doesn't mean anything to me. Meet the guy in charge of the 1864 session here, as he's described here, the quote, pursuer of nubile young females, unquote, who helped pass Arizona's 1864 abortion law. You'll never believe it. He was a total hypocrite and a bit of a pervy scumbag as well. Well, but it was a different time. America was rent asunder by civil war, and there were hot chicks all over the place. So what could you expect a guy like this to do? I don't know. I'm not certain I don't know where the hell this came from, but it took all of about 10 seconds to find out that the guy behind the law about controlling women's lives, and particularly their sex lives, was a bit of a gigantic major perv. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, what do we follow up with? The bit of a gigantic major perv story? That's what we teased on the outro. But at the same time, Scott rides into the rescue, sending along the article that I had in mind about a Russian oligarch type who showed up out of nowhere with money. But I'm not certain that it's, now I can't remember the substance of the article. But the article's here, so I don't need to remember the substance of the article. We must have discussed it, and I must have sent it along with one of the roundups for his summarization, which is probably how it sprung to mind. It is The Guardian's reporting from a couple of days ago, April 3rd, Hugo Lowell writing exclusive. Now you remember it, right? It was exclusive to The Guardian, and we said so at the time. Trump media saved in 2022 by Russian-American under criminal investigation. Trump's social media company, which just went public and is losing all of its money, relying partly on loans from a trust managed by a person of interest to prosecutors. I don't know if we read the article, but I think we read the headline. So separate, sort of. If there's any such thing as separate Trump ventures. I guess it's separate from, and I don't know whether maybe Axos Bank, if it is a bank, actually also provided some money in bailing out or backing or floating Trump media as well. But generally speaking, the reporting we've read on Axos was that it was about saving his real estate empire, not the social media company. So maybe there's no overlap there, but it all becomes so confusing, just like trying to keep all of his various criminal trials straight. There's overlap and great difficulty, and I don't know. So I'll make you wait a little bit longer to find out what a pervy perv the Arizonans are. Let's take a look at this one, because I think we didn't read the content of the article at the time. Donald Trump's social media company, Trump Media, managed to go public last week only after it had been kept afloat in 2022 by emergency loans, which, maybe this is why it's so easy to confuse the two, right? Like, he has a real estate empire, but he only managed to keep it thanks to emergency loans, also probably provided in part by a Russian-American businessman under scrutiny in a federal insider trading and money laundering investigation. Okay, so Scott reminds me this was from Tuesday's show that we at least mentioned the headline, and I think that's all we got to do. The former U.S. president stands to gain billions of dollars. His stake is currently valued at about $4 billion, and I think that's down to 2 point something at this point. From the merger between Trump Media and Technology Group and the blank check company Digital World Acquisition Company, which took the parent company of Truth Social public. But Trump Media almost did not make it to the merger after regulators opened a securities investigation into the merger in 2021 and caused the company to burn through cash. Wow, can you believe it? At an extraordinary rate as it waited to get the green light for its stock market debut. The situation led Trump Media to take emergency loans, including from an entity called ES Family Trust, which, this is interesting, which opened an account with Paxum Bank, not Axos Bank, not Axios, Paxum Bank, a small bank registered in the Caribbean island of, how do you pronounce it again? It's Dominica, right? Not Dominica, but Dominica. That is best known, it says here, for providing financial services to the porn industry. So, really all the threads, once again coming together, because Donald Trump literally gets in bed with unsavory characters. Well, I was going to say literally gets in bed with unsavory characters all over the place, but what's unsavory about Stormy Daniels? She's quite, she's on the up and up. She's pretty open about what she does, right? Anyway, some might say the industry was unsavory, even if she's not. But, one, how do you pronounce the island? Dominica. How do you pronounce the sea that it's in? Caribbean or Caribbean? You tell me your preference. And, how interesting. So the island is apparently, in the Guardian's telling, best known for providing financial services to the porn industry, which is just an interesting thing all by itself. And then, of course, again, he's on trial beginning Monday in New York for hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, porn actress. That has nothing to do with this necessarily, but there's always weird strings and weird connections. Dominica, for us, is best known as the the provider of diplomatic credentials to Paolo Zampolini, who is the guy who, putting it mildly, introduced Trump to Melania, and in his day was every bit the weirdo, pervy, young teenage model impresario what was the guy's name now? I've already forgotten. Blanking on the name of John, the similarly entangled guy who, what was his thing? Was it Elite Models? Was that his outfit? John Casablancas. That's right. So, I don't know, just weird threads that you're connecting way back and when in my mind, because there were real connections. But John Casablancas, who ran the modeling agency that brought in all sorts of young, very often extremely young, teenage girls, and Trump loved to hang out with him, and he also loved to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, just saying, and Paolo Zampolini, who was, is it Zampolini or all right, I'll have to look it up now to just double check everything. Paolo Zampoli. There's no Eni in it. It's Paolo Zampoli, that I'm thinking of. But they all were running the same game, and Trump got the idea. If there was a Trump modeling agency for a while, Trump Models, which was just his attempt to do vertical integration on the operation that he was otherwise paying Casablancas and Zampoli for, providing young models to come to his Trump Tower and Trump Plaza cocaine parties to try and lure in big spender, high roller buyers for condos in these places. And it was essentially like, come to one of our big model and cocaine parties here and see the advantage to buying a bachelor pad party condo here so that your wife or girlfriend doesn't find out that you're having big cocaine modeling parties at your house. You can have them here at the Trump Plaza, and then you invite me, and I come in and I snore off of everything and never buy my own drugs or models. But why spend all that money paying John Casablancas, if he did in fact actually pay him, or Paolo Zampoli for the models when you could just start a Trump modeling agency? I drink water, Trump water. I eat steaks, Trump steaks. I bang models, Trump models. I love sneaking into the dressing rooms of teenage pageant participants. Trump pageants. Just buy whatever it is you like. Anyway, but Paolo Zampoli made a late in his career shift to, after introducing Trump to Melania, and she was a model and just whatever, wink, wink, has nothing to do with any of the other things that we were talking about, I'm sure. And, oh yes, and by the way, lots of those models were imported from Eastern Europe, i.e. probably trafficked to him by the Russians with whom he was dealing, and they would ship underage Russian and Eastern European models to the United States, where he would essentially imprison them in apartments that he owned and charge them rent out of their modeling fees, and they just had basically a dormitory to stay in, and they were shipped out every day to do modeling work, and he would take a skim off of the take there. Anyway, but he got the business model from Casablancas and Zampoli, and Zampoli later transitioned into this weird passport sales game, helping Dominica develop their, what they call it, like citizenship through investment or something like that, which is basically if you agree to invest, some large amount of money in development projects here in Dominica, then we'll give you a passport, and then you can claim dual citizenship. And when when things hit the fan, presumably you can escape to our place. Except that the thing that hits the fan is rising sea levels, in which case, whatever. Then you have to go elsewhere. But yeah, or if you need a place to hide your money, right? So the two things that Dominica is known for is banking services for the porn industry, because they're cool guys, and dual citizenship / passports in exchange for cash, and Paolo Zampoli is the guy, and he to this day contends that he is the UN permanent representative to the United Nations for Dominica. And to me, that's how they're best known. But that was a distraction, although we did get back into the pervs. So that's good news. By the way, John Casablancas, too, had an interesting end, as I recall, to his career after more or less being busted as a super perv for the way he ran elite modeling agencies, and that whole thing fell apart. Trump made him like sales director of Trump Tower Brazil or something, and he went down to Brazil, and Trump started, I think he absconded to Brazil because I think he had familial ties to Brazil, but I'm not certain that that's the case. Anyway, he ran away from all the charges and controversy and headed down to Brazil, and it may have been after that point at which the Trump organization said, you know what we should do? We should have a Trump Tower somewhere in Rio, I suppose. But I'm not positive that they located it in Rio or only in Rio, but we'll put up a building, or we won't put up a building. Someone else will, and we'll lease the name to them. And we need to have a sales guy. And John Casablancas hooked us up so many times with hot chicks. So we'll pay him back by making him, sales manager at one of these places. Kind of an ignominious end, if you ask me, but nobody asked me. Anyway, so I was also telling you about the sanctioned Russian that bailed out the current venture to which Trump is pinning all his hopes, Trump Media, right? So he ends up taking emergency loans from ES Family Trust, which had an account at Paxum Bank, which is registered in Dominica, which is best known to the Guardian anyway, as providing financial services to the porn industry. Through leaked documents, the Guardian has learned that ES Family Trust operated like a shell company. Oh, well, that's terrible. For a Russian-American businessman named Anton, Postolnikov, that's my best guess, who co-owns Paxum Bank, as a matter of fact, and has been a subject of a years-long joint federal criminal investigation by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security into the Trump Media merger. The existence of the trust has previously been reported by The Guardian and The Washington Post. However, who controlled the account, how the trust was connected to Paxum Bank, and how the money had been funneled through the trust to Trump Media was unknown because it had been laundered. The new details about the trust are drawn from documents including Paxum Bank records showing Postolnikov having access to the trust's account, the papers that created the trust showing as its settlor, like the financial settler, a lawyer in St. Petersburg, Russia, and 3 years of the trust's financial transactions. The concern surrounding the loans to Trump Media is that ES Family Trust may have been used to complete a transaction that Paxum itself could not. Paxum Bank does not offer loans in the U.S. as it lacks a U.S. banking license, just as Hanky and Knight Insurance lacked a license in New York to offer the bonds. But hey, who cares? It's just red tape, right? Paxum Bank does not offer loans in the U.S. It lacks a banking license in the U.S. and is not regulated by the FDIC. Postolnikov appears to have used the trust to loan money to help save Trump Media and the Truth Social platform because his bank itself could not furnish the loan. Postolnikov, the nephew of Alexander Smirnov, an ally of the Russian president, not somehow the Smirnov that was just indicted for lying to the FBI trying to frame Hunter Biden, but another Smirnov, I guess. And of course, yes, so this one, Alexander Smirnov, is an ally of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. He has not been charged with a crime, by the way. But in response to an email to Postolnikov seeking comment, a lawyer in Dominica, representing Paxum Bank, warned of legal action for reporting the contents of the leaked documents. There is also no indication that Trump or Trump Media had any idea about the nature of the loans, beyond that they were opaque. Nor has the company or its executives been accused of wrongdoing. A spokesperson for Trump Media did not respond to a request for comment. After this story was published, a lawyer representing Trump Media said in a statement, "The Guardian continues to propagate its false narrative that TMTG has these fake connections to Russia. It's a hoax. Litigation will continue on this point, and we are confident that the Guardian will ultimately be held responsible for its defamation and its story should be retracted." It shouldn't be, and they probably won't be held responsible for anything because it's not defamation, but rather true. But we'll see. But Postolnikov has been under increasing scrutiny in the criminal investigation into Trump Media merger. Most recently, he has been listed on search warrant affidavits alongside several associates, one of whom was indicted last month for money laundering on top of earlier insider trading charges. So, a good guy. In late 2021, Trump Media was facing financial trouble after the original planned merger with Digital World was delayed indefinitely when the SEC opened an investigation into the merger. Trump Media's since ousted co-founder turned whistleblower Will Wilkerson recounted in an interview. And remember that Trump is in protracted litigation with the guys who actually started Trump Media for him as well. Now, part of the problem was that Trump Media struggled to get financing because traditional banks, the ones that are licensed and examined by the FDIC and the SEC, they were reluctant to lend millions to Trump's social media company in the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack, Wilkerson said. Bad timing, I guess. Just wait a while, then they would be willing to do business with you. But he couldn't wait. Trump Media eventually found some lenders, including ES Family Trust, but the sequence of events was curious. So this is all interesting about ES Family Trust, but they're not the sole bailout source. There were others, and I wonder whether any of those were Axos Bank. We should look into that. ES Family Trust was established on May 18th, 2021. Its creation papers show. So right around the time that Trump needed a loan, and Postolnikov wanted to use Paxim Bank to give him a loan, but they couldn't because they weren't licensed to do business in the United States. And so all of a sudden, ES Family Trust got established, and it provided the money. How odd. Postolnikov's user access to the account was verified on November 30th, 2021 by a Paxim Bank manager in Dominica. The trust was funded for the first time on December 2nd, 2021, even fishier. Trump Media then received loans from ES Family Trust, $2 million on December 23rd, 2021, and $6 million more on February 17th, 2022. The loans came in the form of convertible promissory notes. How interesting. Were any of them worth $185 million by any chance? Probably not. He was only getting $6 million and $2 million, $8 million in loans. But okay. So what does that mean? Convertible promissory notes. And they probably do say promissory down in Dominica. Meaning ES Family Trust would gain a major stake in Trump Media because it was offering the money in exchange for Trump Media agreeing to convert the loan principal into shares of company stock, which is weird because everybody's been going around saying Trump owns 90% plus of Trump Media and he's going to have a huge windfall and it's going to bail him out and he's going to make billions of dollars. But there's also this other weird instrument out there that says, no. ES Trust owns millions of dollars worth of Trump Media stock. But oddly, the notes, these promissory notes, convertible promissory notes, were never signed. Oh no, I can't believe there was a problem with the paperwork. But the investment in Trump Media proved to be huge, unless, of course, not signing the notes means something. While precise figures can only be known by Trump Media, ES Family Trust's stake in Trump Media is worth, it is said, between $20 and $40 million, even after the sharp decline of the company's share price in the wake of a poor earnings report. The ES Family Trust account also appears to have benefited Postolnikov personally. As the criminal investigation into the Trump Media deal intensified toward the end of last year, the trust recorded several, something has happened. A button has accidentally been touched. Let's see if we can get back to where we were. Yes. As the criminal investigation intensified toward the end of last year, the trust recorded several transfers to Postolnikov with the subject line, partial loan return. In total, the documents showed that the trust transferred $4.8 million to Postolnikov's account, though $3 million was inexplicably reversed for some strange reason. No one knows why these things are happening. On July 17th, 2023, Postolnikov received $300,000. On October 17th, 2023, Postolnikov received $1.5 million before it was reversed, whatever that even means, the next day. Later the same day, Postolnikov again received $1.5 million, which was also reversed. On October 19th, 2023, Postolnikov received $1.5 million for a third and final time. The reason for the trust's creation remains unknown. What about this reversal business? Aside from the money that went to Trump Media, the trust's statements show the trust has directly invested money with only two other companies, $10.8 million to 11 Ventures, LLC, a venture capital firm, and $1 million to Wedbush Securities, a wealth management firm. The current status of ES Family Trust is also unknown. The trust's address is listed as a residential home in Hollywood, Florida. That's Dade County, I think, or thereabouts. Broward County, perhaps? Broward County. But I don't know. I know Hollywood, Florida. My grandparents used to live there. So come on. Anyway, north of Miami, East Coast, what have you. And terribly overbuilt in gigantic condos on the beach. But according to the property website Redfin, the 6-bedroom home appears to have been sold in December of 2023. The creation papers also contained something notable, a declaration that if the original trustee, a Paxum Bank employee named Angel, or perhaps Angel Pacheco, stepped down from the role, his successor would be a certain individual named Michael Schwartzman. Okay, that doesn't sound great for some reason. Sprawling money laundering investigation is the next section here. Last month, federal prosecutors charged Michael Schwartzman, a close associate of Postolnikov, with money laundering in a superseding indictment after previously charging him and two others in July with insider trading of Digital World shares. Wow. Schwartzman and his co-defendants pleaded not guilty. At least part of the evidence against Schwartzman came from a confidential informant for the DHS, court filings show. In one March 2023 meeting with the informant and an associate, Schwartzman mentioned a friend who owned a bank in Dominica and made bridge loans to Trump Media. Schwartzman said that a friend of his owns a bank in the island of Dominica and would be able to provide banking services to Russian and Ukrainian nationals if the confidential informant had other clients, who might be in need of that service. The DHS report said Schwartzman's associate told the confidential informant that he does not think the SEC would be able to go after Schwartzman for his part in the investment, but mentioned that Schwartzman essentially provided bridge financing for the firm behind the Truth social media platform, it said. So he's dining out on that experience. The unredacted parts of the DHS report do not specify whether the friend was Postolnikov and what the bridge financing actually referred to. But the report left open the possibility that Schwartzman also had a role with the trust. A lawyer for Schwartzman declined to comment on his client's relationship with Postolnikov. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York also declined to comment. It is unclear whether federal prosecutors are aware that Trump Media was propped up by Postolnikov via ES Family Trust. At the same time, the money laundering investigation surrounding the Trump Media merger and the scrutiny on Postolnikov appears to have ballooned in recent months. All of which, by the way, presumably goes away should Trump return to the White House via election or otherwise. The investigation into potential money laundering appears to have started after Wilkerson's lawyers, that's the whistleblowing ex-founder of what became Trump Media, right? After his lawyers, after Wilkerson's lawyers, Phil Brewster, Stephen Bell, and Patrick Mincy, alerted the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York to the ES Family Trust loans in October of 2022. Months later, in June of 2023, the FBI expanded its investigation to work jointly with the Department of Homeland Security's El Dorado Task Force, which specializes in money laundering. I can't believe he's involved in money laundering again. And its illicit proceeds and foreign corruption group, which targets corrupt foreign officials who use U.S. entities to launder illicit funds. And I wonder whether Paolo Zampoli is on their watch list or not. So how do you like that? That seems like a fun diversion. And once again, we find ourselves up against another break, but gives us another opportunity. Speaking of the modern day pervs, John Casablancas, Donald Trump, Paolo Zampoli, and others, Jeffrey Epstein among them, we can tease coming back with the story of pervs of yore, I guess, from Arizona. We'll finally come back and connect that thread of today's themed show after the break heralded by this music. So, anyway, I thought that was, it was an interesting diversion, and I didn't know that I was going to spend that much time on it, but thank you to Scott for finding that item. I think it is still in here somewhere in pocket, but now it's at the top of the list, so it cuts back on from Tuesday and reintroduced to the discourse on Thursday. We'll be right back. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I have somehow accidentally closed Pocket while I was trying to clean things up, but let's get that ready for a return to our regularly scheduled, I don't know what, connection of the various threads of today's show. So I've been telling you for a long time here that I was going to read you this piece, and now I threaten to follow through with it here. Meet the pursuer of nubile young females. That's a quote. Who helped pass Arizona's 1864 abortion law. The Arizona Supreme Court has decided that the law is still relevant, so let's talk about the guy who led the body that passed it. Now, that's not going to undo it by itself, certainly. And it's not even direct evidence that there's anything, facially invalid about the law, except for the fact that it was passed in a territorial legislature. It wasn't even the state at the time. It doesn't mention the word abortion. I think that's what Republicans would say if the shoe were on the other foot in there. But more to the point, we have the prepared thoughts to share with you here of Monica Hesse. I don't know how she pronounces it. Hesse. Or something like that, perhaps, or just goes with the Americanized Hess. The time has come to reflect on the life and times, especially the times, of William Claude Jones. I love bringing up these obscure figures when writers have gathered the facts on them. It's kind of interesting. It's just kind of amazing that, the ripple effects of having been this particular weirdo. Jones was a, quote, prevaricator, a poet, a politician, and the pursuer of nubile young females. According to a 1990 article, so, not particularly enlightened at that point either, but a 1990 article published in the Journal of Arizona History, which appears to be the most comprehensive, we're apparently still, do we get knocked off the air here somehow? Let me just double check. Scott tells me we're still off. Does that mean there's still music playing? Or you won't be able to hear me asking that question. But we have to continue on as though we were back on the air. That would be an odd thing if for some reason we didn't return. But all the broadcast and the stream appears to be going strong. So, all we can do is, now I really have to ask that question and find out what's going on. Let's see. This is difficult to do at the same time as reading you an article. there's really no way to do that. So I'll just ask him, is there music still playing or what? But for those of you listening via podcast, this is just a annoying inconvenience and a diversion from my long-promised story about the pervs of Arizona. So, in 1990, they realized that there was something a little bit weird about this guy, but could only describe him as a pursuer of nubile young females, because I guess by that point, Donald Trump was still a celebrity for the very same reason. And we couldn't see what was wrong with that. But we weren't as wise to these shenanigans as we are now, I guess. Well, anyway, this 1990 article in the Journal of Arizona History appears to be the most comprehensive biographical report published on the life of the 19th century rogue. And it's all we can come up with is rogue at this point. It's 2024. Anyway, his pursuit of such nubility, wow, I don't think we've ever read it in that form before, began with a marriage, because sacred institution, a marriage to Sarah Freeman, who bore him 2 children in the 1840s, when Jones would have been in his 20s and early 30s. He was a sitting member of the Missouri state legislature at the time, but his family followed him to Arkansas and then to Texas as he searched for more prominent government appointments. He was a grifter. In 1854, President Franklin Pierce eventually named him U.S. Attorney for the New Mexico Territory, and it was hereabout that Jones's first wife filed for divorce. How interesting. His next wife was a girl whose name was believed to be, because why know anything for sure when you're getting married to somebody, who was believed to be Maria, and it's then abbreviated V here, Maria V, I don't know what the V would stand for, Del Refugio, we would probably anglicize that. This, according to L. Boyd Finch, the author of the journal article, New Mexico's delegate to Washington at the time, Miguel Otero, was bothered by the union. I guess it drew scrutiny even then. He, quote, declared that the bride was 12 years old, Finch writes, and that Jones had, quote, abducted her. Well, that really is something. A groomer and a trafficker wrote the 1864 abortion law that the Arizona Supreme Court has just reinstated, and that the entirety of the Republican conference of the Arizona State Legislature blocked from being repealed just yesterday. Otero petitioned President James Buchanan to fire Jones for the moral failing. Remember, he's U.S. Attorney for the New Mexico Territory. He's abducted a 12-year-old and claimed to marry her. But Jones resigned instead. So it actually kind of worked. I mean, it didn't get the 12-year-old out of his hands. No matter. The mid-19th century was, by any standard you or I would recognize, a hideous place for women. The predatory relationship did not end Jones's political career. He merely moved farther west to the Arizona Territory. There, Jones supported secession from the southern states in the impending Civil War. By the way, the update from Scott on my inquiry, no sound at all. Okay. Well, I feel bad for those of you who are listening to the stream live. And we're waiting for this incredible story to come up. And here I delayed it an entire segment and then crash-a-reno. Nothing happened. All right, you'll have to wait. I'll try and turn around the podcast as fast as I can. All right, and I guess now the next thing is to message Justice and say, Scott says no sound coming out of the third break. Sorry for those of you who are going to have to live through this again. in the podcast. Okay, so where were we in describing this incredible career? And history is replete with these incredible wackadoodles. And I don't know. Of course, the gloss of history afterwards makes it like, oh, well, our little ancestors and our founders and the framers of this or that law were, respectable, well-to-do characters. But anyway, so not unlike certain other itinerant perverts, he decided, once caught, simply to move to a new territory where people wouldn't know that his wife was a 12-year-old and that he had abducted her. So he moves on further west to the Arizona territory, and there, Jones, what do you know, supported secession from the secession from the southern states? Is that what we're saying? There, Jones supported secession, maybe the secession of the southern states in the impending Civil War. He also landed upon, that's an interesting way of putting it, his third wife, Caroline Stevens, who was 15 years old. Claude, by this time, was around 50. So it's not clear to me, by the way, whether he's saying, the Arizona territory wouldn't have to secede from the southern states. The southern states didn't own the Arizona territory. I assume that this kind of person might end up, on the side of the Confederacy here. But then again, it stands to reason, right? Remember, the southern states are seceding at the behest of wealthy southern landowners who themselves are trafficking in teenage concubine sex slaves and want to preserve their ability to do that. And no great mystery how they would find common cause with someone who's doing that with free, presumably white women, although at least maybe one Mexican-American in the mix there, by force, by abducting her, allegedly. And, remember his path to Arizona is Missouri to Arkansas to Texas to New Mexico to Arizona. So he's kind of southern in his orientation anyway. So now, 50 years old, gets himself a third wife. No word what happened to the 12-year-old wife, but, you can imagine any number of horrible things that might have happened there. The best outcome is, he grants a divorce, but no word on that. Anyway, 50 years old, finds himself a 15-year-old Caroline Stevens, and, well, that's concerning, but, they were married for only a year anyway, because in 1865, Finch writes, Jones left Caroline. She never saw or heard from him again. So, that seems pretty strange. All right. Well, I'm getting more notes from Scott here. Not too much I can do about this. We just got to have to record this for podcasting, and that's the end of it. He had boarded a train for California once he left Caroline, and then a boat for Hawaii. He's just going so far west he's going to end up in the east, where he again entered local politics. I hesitate to find out what that might mean. Winning a seat in the Kingdom's, yes, that's right, Kingdom's lower house by 1868. A local girl named Meme Kalehau. That's my best guess at the pronunciation of the Hawaiian name. Reportedly a princess from a noble family. That didn't save her because she was pregnant with his child. She was 14. No word on his abducting her in this situation. All right. Let's see. I guess Justice tells me, having refreshed things over at Netroots Radio World Headquarters, we may be back on with our live stream. You are joining us in the middle of this incredible story that you were waiting for, of this wackadoodle pervert who's responsible for the 1864 anti-abortion law in Arizona. To catch you up, I know, I'm sorry, those of you who have been following all along, get rather bored with this. He was a Missouri state legislator who made off for Arkansas, then Texas, then landed in the New Mexico territory where he was made U.S. attorney for the New Mexico territory, at which point he at some point splits with his first wife, and then according to the delegate for New Mexico, the delegate to Congress for New Mexico at the time, abducts a local 12-year-old, purports to marry her, and, he reports this essentially to the president at the time, who, I guess, investigates, and it causes his resignation from the U.S. attorney position in New Mexico. But no matter, he then absconds for Arizona territory instead and picks up a 15-year-old wife. At that point, he is nearing 50 years old. Well, it doesn't go all that well for him, I guess, in Arizona, although he sticks around long enough to take care of this anti-abortion law. But without even discussing that chapter in his life, he at some point picks up and makes off for California, then Hawaii, where he wins a seat in the Kingdom of Hawaii's lower house of the legislature, and finds himself another child bride, a 14-year-old Maymay Kalehau. And, well, that's pretty amazing. Jones and Kalehau married and had several children together until she died at the age of 28 in 1881. And I have a feeling that a lot of his younger wives, it doesn't say under what circumstances they parted, and I wonder whether death just, happened to follow. Anyway, Jones then wed for a fifth time a woman named Mary Aquina, age unknown, only to file for divorce 2 years later because of the institution of marriage and family values and stuff. Shortly after that, Jones died on the island of Maui. So, Judy, maybe you want to find where this guy is buried and take your dogs for a walk or something like that. Do you have dogs? I'm not certain. Get dogs. Or just empty the local dog waste bin on this guy's grave, I guess. But you don't want to pollute Maui. Anyway, Finch, Jones's biographer, is careful to say that there is a lot about W. Claude Jones's life that has been lost to time. We know very little about his early upbringing, though that might be interesting to know about, or how much he might have exaggerated some of the military exploits he was known to boast about. We also, it almost goes without saying, know very little about his wives, their inner lives, and what they thought of their unions and the times they lived in. By now, you're probably wondering, why in God's name I am writing about this lecherous caricature of a man whose compatriots in the 19th century recognized that he was problematic. And here's why. While Jones lived in Arizona, he was elected to represent Tucson in the first Arizona Territorial Legislative Assembly, and then, when that legislature was convened in 1864, he was elected Speaker of the House. Why? What? They just had nothing going on in Arizona at that time. And it was that legislature, the one that Jones presided over in 1864, after he had already abandoned his first wife, married a 12-year-old, and was just weeks away from marrying a 15-year-old, though still a few years away from marrying a 14-year-old. It was that legislature that passed a law reading, "Every person who shall administer, or cause to be administered, or taken any medicinal substances, or shall use or cause to be used any instruments whatever, with the intention to procure the miscarriage of a woman then being with child, and shall be thereof duly convicted, shall be punished by imprisonment in the territorial prison for a term not less than 2 years, nor more than 5 years." And once again, if the shoe were on the other foot, Republicans would say, that's about miscarriages, not abortions. Different things. Sorry, can't help you. Not to mention the fact that if you are convicted, we have no territorial prison here to put you in. Therefore, I guess you're going to have to walk. Anyway, it was that piece of legislation that earlier this week was reinstated as the law of the land in Arizona. It represents a near total ban on abortion in that state. The state's Supreme Court voted 4-2 that the 160-year-old law, put into place nearly 5 decades before Arizona was even a state, should supersede the previous rule, which guarded the right to an abortion up to 15 weeks gestation. The new, and by I mean very old, law is scheduled to go into effect in 2 weeks' time. William Claude Jones sauntered into the wide expanse of a southwestern territory more than 150 years ago, and this man's morals are now the benchmark for the reproductive rights of the 7 million people who live in Arizona. Good night. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Monica. That was very enlightening and helpful. Too bad those of you who were listening to the live stream may have been deprived of some portion of that, but I'll make it quickly available to you as a podcast as soon as possible. So there was more going on there, by the way. Why not make it all about Arizona? Philip Bump took up the subject, also for the Washington Post, from a slightly different angle, under the headline of "Here Are Some Other Laws Arizona Had on the Books in 1864. In case you were wondering, what else were they up to? Because you wonder why that would be, again, at the top of their list, given that they were just organized as a territory. Or at least this was their first legislature. Arizona sprang into existence in February of 1863, just under halfway through the Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln, having signed the act that created the new territory, appointed judges to administer it, and among them was a native New Yorker, William T. Howell. The appointed governor, John Goodwin, soon determined that the laws established at the territory's founding, imported from New Mexico, didn't work. So that was all part of, I guess, were they all part of the same territory, or did they just say, we'll just borrow the laws of New Mexico and make them the laws of Arizona as well? Okay. Apparently we came back on the air and then went out again. Oh well, I don't know what to tell you. There's internet problems probably happening over in Justice Land, and we'll do our best to complete this. All right. Well, so John Goodwin, the appointed governor, said, yeah, the laws that we imported from New Mexico aren't really working, and he tasked Howell, the judge, with writing Arizona's first set of laws and procedures, a job that Howell began with the help of a former Wisconsin governor, Coles Bashford. In late 1864, the Howell Code, Arizona's first set of laws, was born. And on Tuesday, its original ban on abortion again became Arizona's legal standard. Oh, this is interesting. So now I guess there's some question about, by what process did Howell implement these laws? And I wonder whether he drafted a model code and then handed it to the legislature and said, ratify this. In which case, it may be that Howell is responsible for the drafting of the text that became this anti-abortion law or anti-miscarriage law, depending on how you look at it. And that, what's his name, the pervert, let me go back in the other article and figure that one out. William Claude Jones may just have been handed a stack of papers and said, all right, we'll pass this. To hell with it. Who cares? So, on Tuesday, that original ban on abortion again became Arizona's legal standard. The decision by Arizona's Supreme Court to revive the initial ban triggered an enormous backlash and elevated difficult political questions for Republicans nationally and in the state. It also spurred no small amount of scoffing about how archaic the law must be, given the year of its provenance. California Governor Gavin Newsom, for example, pointed out that Arizona relied on dirt roads when the territorial legislature passed the Howell Code. Those particular complaints, though, miss the point. It isn't that the law is old that makes it a dubious fit for the moment. After all, the Bill of Rights is old, and it contains rules and guidelines that deserve to be maintained. Instead, the point is that the Howell Code was a product of its time and its time's morality, a point that is made more obvious when considering other elements of the law that clearly do not conform to 2024 beliefs. The most obvious difference between now and then that is reflected in the Howell Code is that the United States was, at the time, at war with Southern secessionists, desperate to maintain the institution of slavery. Coincidentally, Tuesday also marked the anniversary of the South's final surrender, by the way. Slavery was not allowed in Arizona, but the Howell Code does recognize it as a legal issue. Section 55 of Chapter 10 of Crimes and Punishments makes it illegal to entice black people to leave Arizona so that they can be sold into slavery. Well, that was nice of them. The prohibition on abortion comes a bit before that, just after the section banning duels. In case you're wondering what the times were like. Section 45 focused initially on making intentional poisoning a crime and also establishes the ban on abortion. We've read most of the language before. Every person who shall administer or cause to be administered or taken any medicinal substances or shall use or cause to be used any instruments, whatever, with the intention to procure the miscarriage of any woman then being with child and shall be thereof duly convicted, shall be punished by imprisonment in the territorial prison, right, 2 to 5 years, right? And then the additional language that Greg mentioned, provided that no physician shall be affected by the last clause of this section, the jail term, who in the discharge of his professional duties deems it necessary to produce the miscarriage of any woman in order to save her life. They knew even in 1864 that could happen. This is the origin of the law that remains on the books. Consider, though, the other prohibitions that surrounded the initial Howell language. A bit before that, for example, the code establishes what constitutes a murder or a manslaughter. In Section 34, it also creates the category of excusable homicides. Those include situations such as when, quote, a man is at work with an axe and the head flies off and kills a bystander. I mean, it's not funny if it happens to you. But okay, it must have happened to somebody and it was a terrible tragedy. It's just kind of amazing. What else? What about when a parent is moderately correcting his child, or a master his servant, or scholar? Scholar? Okay. Now, only when that correction is moderate, mind you. Exceed the bounds of moderate correction and you're subject to more severe charges. But somehow, you're not guilty of murder if during moderate correction of the child, you kill that child. You see. What's moderate? Why would it be? I don't know. Section 38, by the way, offers another assessment of pregnancy. If any woman shall endeavor privately, either by herself or the procurement of others, to conceal the death of any issue of her body, male or female, which, if born alive, would be a bastard, so that it may not come to light, whether it shall have been murdered or not, it reads, every such mother being convicted thereof shall suffer imprisonment in the county jail for a term not exceeding 1 year. In other words, if you were to become pregnant out of wedlock and have a miscarriage and then conceal it, you could go to jail for a year. If you disagreed with this rule, of course, you had little recourse. Only white male citizens of the United States or Mexico who'd lived in the territory for 6 months were allowed to vote. But by the way, how do you like that? So the traditionalists of the time, born in Mexico, that was still A-okay with them. You're allowed to vote. In Section 47, the Howell Code addresses rape, which is defined as the carnal knowledge of a female forcibly and against her will. It also specifies penalties for having carnal knowledge of any female child under the age of What should we settle on? How about 10 years, either with or without her consent? To put a fine point on it, the consent at issue here is purportedly coming from a 9-year-old. This also on the list for some reason of things that they absolutely just had to cover. We need new laws for this new territory. Let's decide all the important stuff. How old do they have to be before they can consent to sex? 10? I don't know. I got a 9-year-old. Let's see if we can clean this up a little bit. I guess that was on their minds. Many of the punishments identified for criminal actions result in execution, by the way. There's even a stipulation that those who by willful and corrupt perjury or subornation of perjury get someone convicted and executed for a crime, they might themselves be subject to capital punishment, maybe by a flying axe head. Here again, we encounter specific rules centered on women. If there was, quote, good reason to believe that a condemned woman was pregnant, the code states, the sheriff could ask a panel of 3 doctors to determine her status to the best of her ability, their ability, I guess. If she wasn't pregnant, she was executed. If she was allowed to live till she gave birth, at which point the governor could once again move the execution forward, because family values. You know how it is. Well, there's a couple of other real wacko ones here, but I guess we got through the bulk of it. There are other reminders of this legal framework centered around the frontier, from sanctions for refusing to join a posse or the rules governing citizens' arrests. There's also an interesting process established for holding accountable elected officials. The Howell Code says third parties could level accusations of misconduct against sitting officials, forcing the official to appear at a hearing. Well, I wonder if that came in handy with the wackadoodle, serial abductor, groomer, child rapist who headed the legislature.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. I guess it's a little bit glitchy over at Netroots Radio, but Justice says he'll have a pod ready of the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, so you can pick up the program that way, and we'll see whether and when we get Netroots Radio back up and running. Maybe a good time to donate. We'll see you tomorrow.